All right, so welcome. This is the Expanding Your World class, second meeting. And for both of you, your first time here, and also people see this on the recording. So I just want to talk about what the class is about briefly, and also because I think what this class is about is potentially going to evolve. It's in some ways a bit of an experiment. Part of what I'm going to do with you tonight I've been doing for years, and that's to lead awareness through movement, which is a process from the Feldenkrais method. The way it works is that I'll give you verbal instructions for movement, and you'll follow along. The movement is not strenuous, especially this evening. It's going to be pretty laid back, but there's not a right way or a wrong way to do it. It's very much about exploration, tuning into sensations, and one of the main ideas is that we all kind of have an internal map of ourselves, but that map isn't always complete. It's not always accurate. So what the movements are for is really to provide an opportunity to listen inside ourselves and clarify the connections. And when we have a nice experience with awareness through movement, we feel better. But we also often notice that we have a different image of ourselves. It's like we feel clearer in a way, and there's a relationship there. So to the degree that we're doing something that we might describe as, wow, I made an improvement, it's not so much because, I strengthened my muscles or I got more flexible or, these kinds of, there are things we can do that can make us feel stronger or more flexible, but it's the process is really very much about the connection to the brain and just our conception of ourself. And having said that and sort of described it in terms of body, our self-image is also like how we conceive of who we are as our personality. I'm good at this, I'm no good at that. All of those things, they sort of, before we do anything, they've already sort of set us in a certain channel, right? And so often when we're trying to improve something, we do many things, but we fall back into our habits, right? So one of the ideas here is to explore things that aren't so habitual for us, but to do it in a safe and gentle enough way that maybe we can coax our nervous system into new places. But that's just awareness through movement, right? And the point of this class is to try to take that practice and put it in a new context. Now, if there's a class, that by definition means different people come together, and I play this role of being teacher, so I sort of lead everyone. And then typically what happens is, afterwards I'll say, hey, does everyone want to talk about how that was? And people come and they might ask questions about the movements we did, or they say, I felt this and I felt that. All of that is welcome in this class, but I'd like to try to invite a different kind of conversation. And so my idea, and as you probably both know, if you're here already, I'm going to bring in just a short few words. And tonight we're going to be taking words from Shunryu Suzuki. He's a Zen master, one of the main people who brought Zen to the West. But there'll be different words each class. And the idea is that the words, hopefully I'm choosing words that suggest more than the words themselves, that they sort of put out like, what does that mean? Maybe it's somehow poetic, or maybe it's just a concept that stretches us a little bit. And what we're going to do a little bit before and after the movement experience is to use those words to have a kind of a dialogue. And my expectation, although I don't want to tell you ahead of time what you should feel, but my expectation is that after the movement, the words are going to feel different. And we're kind of inviting that possibility, right? I mean, we could come to the end, you go like, no, it's all the same to me as before, and that's fine too. But the point is to invite that rather than just say, do you feel better because we did this movement practice? That would be a great result. But to me, there's a way that we can practice. We can practice yoga. We can practice, as we're going to do here, Feldenkrais, meditation, whatever. And we can do that by ourselves, and we can feel something by ourselves. And then we can go out into the world and go into relationships. And that can be the place that we just fall back into the habits. It's not to say that our solo practice doesn't ripple into our life in some ways, but it's also easy to not carry it into the next situation. So in any case, that's my invitation to us. And it is kind of cool and kind of also challenging to do this over Zoom, but we've all been living on Zoom for over a year now. So that's how we'll do it. So that's kind of my introductory, just general idea about the class. This whole month, the theme is connecting insides and outsides. And that was very explicit in the words that we read last time. But we'll look at that today in another kind of way. You both muted yourself. You're welcome to unmute if you want to. But let me just find out before we kind of get into the specific thing for today. Is there anything about what I said that, you know, that you want to share your thoughts on, or you have a question about, anything that resonated that you're curious about?
I know it'll unfold as we go forward. I am curious, since it is mostly laying down the aspect of the movement. So yeah, I'll learn more.
Okay, you'll find out. I will say though, the one danger in what we're going to do lying down is to make sure you don't just drift off, right? because this is not going to be Feldenkrais. I mean, it's not exercise, so it's generally not incredibly active, but often the situations are actually sometimes pretty bizarre in such a way that there's no way you're going to fall asleep while you're doing this particular thing. But tonight, there'll be a lot of stillness. And as you can probably guess already, if you've seen the words from Suzuki that we're going to use, we're going to be working a lot with breath. But, you know, if someone does drift off, that's not the end of the world. But not drifting off, even as you're doing something quiet, already implies a certain level of attention, right? And attention is really the key tool in this practice. Even though we call it a movement practice, the movements are really there as a way to capture the attention in a particular situation that might, you know, reflect something in daily life in other ways. So
Okay.
Anyway, I'm excited for you to try awareness to movement for the first time.
Me too.
Yeah.
Can you say a little bit more about the, like, I think I understand what you mean about taking this passage of words and then kind of exploring how it moves through our body and then coming back to it and kind of like seeing, like, do we experience it differently? I think that the piece that I'm wondering more about is, you mentioned like embodied dialogue, and then like the increased dialogue between people, and not having it be just like, hey, you ask some questions maybe after, or, you know, someone says that was really great.
Right.
Like what is, I guess I'm just wondering for clarity, like what does that look like or manifest as to you in terms of that dialogue?
Yeah.
Is the dialogue that we share and we're like talking about how it lands, or is it more internal? Like,
Right. Well, part of why I say this is an experiment and I think it's going to unfold is I don't entirely know what it's going to be, but that's actually already part of the answer to your question, right? Because if we come on the Zoom meeting and I say, hey, Jonathan, how you been? You say, good, how are you? And I say, fine. And then we talk about the weather. Like, we're not really in a very unknown land, right? We're doing something we know how to do. And I mean, if we do what I said before, which I know you've done with me, you know, we come to class, we do a movement practice, and we say, what did you think of the movement practice? It's not that there's no value in the discussion, but there's a sort of an expectation in the conversation, right?
Right.
Whereas there's another kind of, so Isabel and I were both part of a workshop recently, and I should mention this because it's really part of the inspiration for the class, but there's a kind of a, you can call it a new practice or a very, very old practice, which is like a revival of Socratic dialogue. But there's a number of people now, many of them doing this on YouTube, but I'm sure people, I actually met a friend in the park today and we had a kind of a version of this person to person, which was nice. But a way of talking with someone where you really don't know where the conversation's going to go, that begins to move into a place where even though you brought your ideas and I brought mine, at a certain point we let go of, I need to get my ideas out there. I mean, maybe we put our ideas out there, but as soon as they're out there, the conversations, something's going to happen. And let's say ideally, we get into some kind of a group flow in the conversation. Now, the reason I say that's embodied is like, if you think again about, hi, how are you? Gee, it's this weather we've been having. We were talking about the weather before we hit record, right? But how open are you? How vulnerable are you? How touched, like literally in your body, are you by the words of another person when it's all sort of scripted and formulaic, right? But then if you just think of someone close to you who you've already had like a deep connection with, and some important conversation where like everyone's hanging on every word. Like, can you almost imagine how that's a different state of your body as well as a different way of sharing words?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's an invitation to that. And so this practice, I don't think I used the word, but this was part of the workshop that we went to, that they're calling dialogos. One of the main ideas that's about dialogos is you don't just do dialogos. What you do is you talk and you hope to arrive into dialogos. But dialogos is the moment where the conversation almost becomes another personality that is not any of the individuals. And it's like we're all looking at the same. It's like if you were on a mountaintop with your friends and you're all looking out at the view. And there's this shared thing that you're looking at and you're experiencing together. If the conversation sort of comes to that place, then maybe we're doing dialogos. Or, I mean, we're not going to do in these classes the exact same format of what people are. So that's why I'm not saying this is dialogos, but it's something like that, I hope, this embodied dialogue.
And to piggyback off that, and it might help Jonathan a bit, are we going to articulate how we are feeling in response to the conversation, and in order to create that embodied dialogue? It would be kind of bringing that focus of how your heart rate or breathing changes in response and so forth. Might help you, Jonathan, just kind of think about how the body and the language is going to kind of start to tie in a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the best explanation is going to be in the doing, which we'll get started with in a minute. But probably would be helpful, and again, since this is new and some people say the recording, I think I'll just actually tell you all the steps so that you kind of know from here till we log off what we're going to do, to give you some sense of it. But so, and this was the first thing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. But I brought in these words from Shunryu Suzuki, and I'll share my screen so that we can all see them in a moment. I'm going to read the words one time, and this particular set of words, as you know, it deals with the breath. So I'm probably going to invite us all to notice that even in the reading. We're all going to be breathing, and I'm going to ask us to really notice that, right? It's not going to be like a reading about breathing in an anatomy textbook, because there is a poetry to how he talks. And there is, if you tune into your breathing, a sensation in your body that can mirror the words as they're being spoken, right? The other thing is our voice. It rides on the breath, right? My breath, even now is delivering my words to you into your ear, right? And so sound and language is exchanged by the vehicle of the breath. And this theme of connecting insides and outsides, communication is doing that, but also breathing is doing that. And one way of thinking of breathing is that you're almost like in a dialogue with your environment, right? So Suzuki's talking about that. Anyway, I'm starting to get into those things, but just very quickly in terms of what we'll do, I'm going to read it, and I might highlight some of the images that I think are particularly useful for us to notice. And then I'm going to actually ask each of you, if you're up for it, to also read it, so that we're going to hear these words multiple times. And part of the reason for that is to actually invite us to maybe begin to experience what's between the words, or to experience how the words feel in each of our own mouths and producing the words, and what it's like to breathe and to listen and to just to make, so the words are important, but the words are sound, the words are melody, the words are rhythm. And so just through the repetition, we'll do a little bit of that. Then the theme is breathing, and the idea of embodied dialogue, right? That's something we do together. So we're going to do something very brief together, which is basically going to involve being here together and breathing. But I have a way of sort of inviting us into relating, like my breath to your breath. So we'll do that briefly. Then we'll go into our practice, which we'll see how the timing goes, but it'll probably be at least a half hour. Awareness through movement can go as long as an hour. I don't think we'll do it that way. This class is an hour and a half, and we're already, ways in, just sort of setting the stage. And I want there to be time after the practice, right? But so when we get to the end, we'll probably just repeat some of the breathing together and maybe come back to the words again. But at that point, we could say that the movement practice, in a sense, after having read the words, it's like an embodied meditation on those words that we just read, right? And then we'll have an experience in the body. Potentially our experience of breathing will be new and different. And then we'll come back together. We'll see if being together is different in some way. And then the way we did this in the workshop that Isabel and I were at, is that we invite ourselves to go towards a place of open dialogue, but as a way of really trying to hold the space, what I'll probably suggest we do is like that we each speak 1 or 2 sentences, and then the next person, we might go around a couple times like that. And the idea is, again, it's to sort of feel as you speak, to notice again, like when you're speaking, the feeling of your voice, or the feeling of like, oh, I said that, and Isabel just moved her eyebrows. Like, what does that mean? Did she think that was funny? Like, whatever, but to become very aware of those things, right? And then it'll open up a little bit. But again, there's no guarantee, but the invitation, the intention is that through the dialogue, we find something beyond what we find just in the movement practice, or just in the reading of the words, or even just in a sort of conversation we might have, but that we didn't invoke in this way. So I was writing to my mailing list about today, and I mentioned this reading of the words, and it kind of occurred to me, and so I put it in the messages. There's almost a ritual aspect here. And this isn't intended to be a new religion or a new, anything like that. But what it is intended to do is almost invite us into an experience of the unknown, right? We don't fully know what it's supposed to be, but if we're all willing to have a surprise together, then that's what we get to kind of find out together at the end. So that's the overview, and hopefully, again, having said that, I think the best thing to do is just to jump in, if everyone's ready to go.
Yep.
Okay. Well, so you're welcome to keep yourself unmuted, or you can mute if you want to. As I said, I'll read first. I'm going to share my screen, and then I may invite you all to join to read as well. Everyone can see this?
Yep.
And I'll just say, you don't have to do this when you read, but I tried this on one before and I thought it was kind of cool. I'm going to read to the end of the sentence and then I'm going to inhale. And so there's going to be space, right? There's going to be, but the invitation is to listen to the words, but to listen to your experience of the words. We'll just find out what it is. When we practice zazen, our mind always follows our breathing. When we inhale, the air comes into the inner world. When we exhale, the air goes out to the outer world. The inner world is limitless, and the outer world is also limitless. We say inner world or outer world, but actually there is just one whole world. In this limitless world, our throat is like a swinging door. The air comes in and goes out like someone passing through a swinging door. If you think I breathe, the I is extra. There is no you to say I. What we call I is just a swinging door which moves when we inhale and when we exhale. It just moves, that is all. When your mind is pure and calm enough to follow this movement, there is nothing, no I, no world, no mind nor body, just a swinging door. So actually, I think there's no need for me to highlight, but just notice the words that repeat. Notice some of the key images, right? And we'll do another round, and if I may, I'll invite Isabel to be our reader this time.
When we practice zazen, our mind always follows our breathing. When we inhale, the air comes into the inner world. When we exhale, the air goes out to the outer world. The inner world is limitless, and the outer world is also limitless. We say inner world or outer world, but actually there is just one whole world. In this limitless world, our throat is like a swinging door. The air comes in and goes out like someone passing through a swinging door. If you think I breathe, the I is extra. There is no you to say I. What we call I is just a swinging door, which moves when we inhale and when we exhale. It just moves, that is all. When your mind is pure and calm enough to follow this movement, there is nothing. No I, no world, no mind, nor body, just a swinging door.
When we practice zazen, our mind always follows our breathing. When we inhale, the air comes into the inner world. When we exhale, air goes out to the outer world. The inner world is limitless, and the outer world is also limitless. We say inner world or outer world, but actually there's just one whole world. And this limitless world, our throat is like a swinging door. The air comes in and goes out like someone passing through a swinging door. If you think I breathe, the I is extra. There is no you to say I. What we call I is just a swinging door, which moves when we inhale and when we exhale. It just moves. That is all. When your mind is pure and calm enough to follow this movement, there is nothing. No I, no world, no mind, nor body. Just a swinging door.
Great. So I'm going to invite us now just to stay present in front of the screen, especially to be present to our breathing. And also, just spend a little time, each of the little squares on your screen. And maybe you can imagine, or maybe you'll just sort of be able to observe everyone else's breathing as well. And this is a little experiment, but if you bring your hand forward so that it can be seen, if you imagine you were holding one of your lungs in your hand, then as you breathed in, it might open. As you exhale, it might close a little bit. So it's just a way of maybe making the rhythm of each of our breaths a little more talking right now, so it's not working so well for me, but you don't have to keep your hand up forever, but let's try this for five or six breaths and just see what this feels like. Okay. So in a moment, we'll move into practice, but is there anything anyone would like to say just about how they're experiencing those words or what happened just in the past few minutes? It's just an open invitation. If something's there for you, there's no right or wrong with it.
It was really interesting. I was more focused on my throat while breathing than I ever have been in my breathing before, just reading those words. But then with the hand movement, it took me to my heart, and I just kind of felt the heartbeat more. I just kind of, I don't know if it was just the movement of my hand made me think of my heart in some way, but yes, so I kind of moved from my throat to my heart, and from the beginning to the end of the breathing. It was interesting.
To breathe, for me, to breathe and to observe you breathing, first, frankly, it doesn't feel totally natural. There's a way that, like, right, but it's also, it does something too, where it's like, oh yeah, we all have to keep taking air in and expelling it out. Like there's just we're different, but we're the same kind of organisms, right? That just sort of comes forward for me in doing that.
I could feel more in sync visually seeing it as well. I realized you and I were breathing rather in sync. I couldn't tell without the hand movement.
Yeah, it was a little more challenging for me to tell as well. Like there's, especially not seeing the whole part of our bodies, but there is like there is some subtle movement I saw from
Yeah.
yeah, the hand made it very evident.
Yeah. Well, so this just seems like a good moment to say, like, the teacher always wants, testimonials or whatnot, right? But the real invitation here is if something's awkward or funny, like that's on the table too. Like the point is to just really like be in what we're in together. And there's a way that, we didn't know what this was going to be. We just tried it. It was, so it works or it doesn't work, or there's an invitation here. So we're just going to follow the thread. So, but I will, unless there's something someone else wants to say, I'll invite us to kind of move into the next part of what we're doing. And so I'll wait a moment to see if there's anything else. Okay, but just so you know, I'm going to invite you to lie on your back on the floor, but I'm also going to invite you in the beginning to be standing. And it's not so important that I see, like if you're a little off camera, but it would be good to see you when you come to the floor. But as you're sort of arranging and you're maybe some activity is happening in your mind as you kind of think, here I'm going into practice now, even without knowing the nature of the practice exactly that you're about to be in. You know that it has something to do with the breath, right? And I'll also say there's no need for you to watch the screen at this point. You can just listen to the words. But in fact, I'll invite you to begin by taking in the space that you're in, right? Just look around. See the dimensions of the space. Kind of where are you in your space? If you don't need your glasses, I'll invite you maybe to take the glasses off just for comfort, unless you prefer to have them on, then you can keep them. But come to just a comfortable standing. Listen to your breathing. Maybe you can bring back to life some of the words from Suzuki about the breath traveling between these limitless worlds on the inside and the outside. She says are actually part of one limitless world. There's this image of the swinging door. Just feel your whole body, feel your connection to the floor below. You're not trying to accomplish anything. You're just trying to be with what is right now. But in whatever way makes sense for you, look for a comfortable way of standing. And notice how your head sits on top of your spine. And just whatever it means to you, can you invite your head to really sit, at least for what feels right in this moment? Can your head sit really on the highest available point on your spine? From there, again, you just listen to your breathing. Bring your attention inside your mouth, inside the passageways of your nose, back of your throat. Although the air is invisible, what kind of sort of image of the breath do you have? How does the air pass through this swinging door? So as you match the image to sensations in your throat, inside your torso, maybe there's movement in your belly. Bring your weight over one leg so that you're to one side, and just notice if the breathing alters in any way. And notice, how does your head sit on top of your spine? Does it feel like it's still at the highest place? Or did it kind of dip off a little to the side or come a little forward or back? Come back to the middle. Just notice if the breath is different. Again, does that shift over one leg change the breath? So go back over that leg again, just to listen to the breath over the one leg, maybe one or two breaths. Then come to the middle. And then shift over the other leg. Breathe here. And just notice, it might not be the kind of thing you tend to think about, but are you discovering that it's actually easier to breathe with your weight over one leg compared to the other? So if you like, both feet can stay on the floor. It's not about, going into a yoga pose or something, but you just bring more weight to one side. And then come back with your weight more or less in the middle. Feel your head at the top of your spine. Feel how the air passes through. But then, if you were, a little sleepy or something like this, if your head just sort of sagged right now, just allow your head to sag as if the weight of your head was a little too much to hold up right now. And notice immediately the breathing. What happened to the shape inside your throat? And then come back with your head sort of at the top of your spine again. And you're just establishing a really simple relationship, that there might be something about balancing your head or a place where your head is less supported. It might alter the breath. So now if you have your head more or less over the top of the spine, you bring your attention inside your mouth again. If you like, you can explore the roof of your mouth a little bit with your tongue, just very softly. But if you pay attention, behind your teeth, there's the area of the hard palate. But further back in your mouth, the dome gets higher. And that area has soft tissue that's called the soft palate. So can you now imagine the soft palate lifting up towards the top of your skull? It's the movement that would happen just at the beginning of a yawn. Don't yawn, but maybe imagine that you were about to yawn, and you can feel that lift. So think of lifting the soft palate upwards. And if you're really quiet, can you notice, does lifting the soft palate, does it just change the feeling in your mouth? Or is there something more global that's different? So to compare it, now think of the soft palate kind of falling down and hardening. You can tense the soft palate. And just, you can experiment. You go back and forth between the soft palate is lifted or it's kind of collapsed and tensed. And notice, does this subtle change in the back of your mouth, does this influence the breathing? Does this influence the way the head sits on top of the spine? Does it even maybe register differently in the soles of your feet against the floor? You might imagine there's some relationship between the soft palate and the arches of your feet. Just experiment with that. And then just slowly now, turn your head a little to one side and the other, like you want it to see over your shoulder. Go slowly. Maybe just allow your arms to hang. Go to one side and the other and just get a sense, is it more comfortable to turn to the left or to the right for you? The shoulders can move, the pelvis can move. It doesn't have to just be your neck, it can be. And you don't have to turn as far as you possibly can. In fact, it's better to go slower. But notice, is there a place where in one direction or the other, you can sort of feel like maybe I could turn more, but I kind of have to increase the effort. Now try lifting the soft palate and kind of maintaining it lifted as if it was lifting you off the ground. And slowly turn, but see, as you turn your head, does something happen in the soft palate? Can you keep it lifted or does it begin to collapse? And just notice what your experience is, but turn your head a little left and a little right. Feel what's going on in your neck. Feel how you breathe. And then repeat the experiment by actually letting the soft palate collapse and fall. And notice if this difference in the soft palate changes your comfort in turning the head. So there's some sort of subtle nuances perhaps, but maybe the change in quality isn't so subtle. Maybe you're noticing the position of the soft palate. It might have more of an influence than you might have guessed. So just come back standing and notice your breathing again. And notice the actual sound of your breathing. Do you hear your breathing going in and out? And as you hear your breathing, can you also hear other sounds in your environment? Can you listen to your environment as sort of tapestry of sounds, and your breath is one of those sounds? And then there might be one more sound, and that would be your thinking. So just notice the state of thinking, and if it is kind of part of what's there for you. You're hearing my voice, you're being asked to notice the breath and different bodily sensations, but are the thoughts also trying to get your attention at the same time? So just notice the space you're in and just gently, slowly begin to wander a little bit, walk a little bit around the room. So there's a rhythm in the stepping of one foot and then the other. And the breath continues its rhythm. Just see how are you connected to these different rhythms. When you're ready, you can make your way down to rest on your back on the floor. And again, it'll be nice if I can see you. Take your time. And when you come all the way down, if it's comfortable for you, I'll suggest that you lengthen your legs, but if it's better to have your feet standing with the knees bent, that's also fine. Maybe just have your arms at your sides. If you'd like something under your head, you can put something there, whatever you need to be comfortable. And you were standing for some time, and you were being asked in particular to notice how your head was supported at the top of your spine and your breathing. So now you have all this support from the floor. So can you invite a letting go of the weight of your head? Just feel the support of the floor behind your head here. See if it's possible for the expression on your face to soften. And sense the movement of your breath from the outer world through the swinging door into the inner world, and then back out again. Just bring your attention to the whole region of your torso and how the breath moves through. Feel how your arms rest on the floor. Notice if there's one arm that accepts the weight of, or accepts the support of the floor more than the other. Does one arm sort of sink further into the floor? And if the other arm seems a little reluctant, just notice, is there some place that you can feel some muscular contraction, or maybe it's in the shoulder or one side of your chest. But here at the beginning, you're simply looking for more allowance to receive the support of the floor. So feel the weight of your pelvis. Feel where is the pressure on the back of your pelvis. Maybe movement of your breathing shifts these pressures slightly as the air comes in, as the air goes out. Feel the whole length of your left leg. Each breath, just imagine the left leg taking more support from the ground. And breathe with your right leg as your right leg accepts the support from the floor. And again, bring your attention to the movement of the air coming into your nostrils, passes over the roof of your mouth, down to the back of your mouth and down into your throat, down your windpipe and branching out to the left and to the right. As you breathe, if it's comfortable for you, have the mouth closed and breathe through the nose. And notice, does it feel like the air comes more into the right nostril or more into the left nostril? The nostrils move with the coming and going of the air. Can you sense the temperature of the air in your nostrils on the way in and then on the way out? Do you notice, when is the air cooler? When is it warmer? And now, the next time that you breathe out, when all of the air that naturally is expelled, you never breathe out all of the air, but when you come to the end of your exhale, can you simply wait just for a few moments and then allow the inhalation to come? But create a little pause at the end of the exhale. And it's not about holding your breath till you're blue in the face. It's just to see what that space feels like. And then the air rushes in again. But do that a number of times after each exhale. And if you notice, again, the sound of your breathing, of course, in that moment, that sound stops. And so maybe the sounds around you, they come a little more into the foreground in the moment where the breath sound isn't there. And so this breathing out and then waiting, it can also invite a slowing down of the breath. And the idea is that there may be a moment you sort of decide not to hold out any longer because there's no, the idea is there's no extra effort here. But at the same time that you don't have to make an effort to breathe in, you're just waiting and then allowing the in-breath. And if you feel the pace is slowing, can you become interested in the process of the inhalation? Do you feel little movements inside yourself that prepare the inhalation, little changes in the musculature, maybe in your chest, maybe in your throat? And you just use this process of exhaling, waiting, and then letting the breath come in, just to notice little details. And now just allow the breath to move naturally again. Just kind of allow your attention to also maybe drift to some other thing for a moment. But notice if doing this has already kind of made the breath come a little more alive for you. Are you a little more present to even the resting breath as it moves through? And so as you bring your attention to the breathing again, notice the actual sound of your breathing. What is the source of that sound? Is there some obstruction somewhere in the nose or in the throat? And so go back to this idea of breathing out and waiting, and then the air comes in. But find out as you listen to the different places that are activated with the breath, what changes if you ask yourself if it would be possible to breathe more quietly? And you might not know how that's done. So it's just an experiment. It's just a question. But as you breathe, just notice again in your throat, your tongue. Are there any places that you feel some tension, some slight holding? So now deliberately actually make the breath noisier again. It doesn't have to be a large noise, but whatever you were just doing, breathe in a way that's a little louder. And feel, what are you doing to make it louder? You feel that you just tightened something or just changed some internal shape somewhere. And then can you inhibit that thing if you want to breathe again more quietly? Does breathing more quietly make it harder to breathe? So it's just a sort of an open question. Why does my breath make this sound? And what is my breath without this sound? Now, suppose that you were going to speak. Suppose that you were going to breathe in because you were about to speak. So don't speak, but breathe in as if to prepare to speak. And just notice when you do that, what happens in your throat, what happens in your mouth, your lips, your eyes. And then if you let go of the idea of speaking, do you feel what lets go? And so be gentle with yourself. Don't do any harm, but experiment. If you create a small tension somewhere, what happens to the sound of the breathing? Could you imagine some way of making the space in your throat a little smaller? And then if you let go of that idea, or is there something that might happen where the nostrils don't fully open? So that maybe the sound, it also corresponds to a sensation somewhere that the breath has to sort of fight its way through. So you just play with a breath that is a little quieter or a little louder, but you notice how this is happening. Okay, and then leave it alone again. And bring your attention to your tongue. And if you touch the tip of your tongue softly to the back of your teeth, but then you think of the back of your tongue and you do something from the back of your tongue that pulls the tip backwards so that it's no longer touching the teeth, and you hold the tongue like that. What happens to your breathing? And then soften the tongue again. Allow it to move forward. And then one more time, just pull the tongue back a little towards the top of the throat. Does the space get smaller there? And then let the tongue come forward. And now, can you take the tongue forward, but think of the tongue being very soft and very wide? And maybe allow it to creep a little forward between your lips. It starts to come out of your mouth. You don't need to hang your tongue way out like a dog on a summer day or anything like that. But just think of your tongue being very soft and wide, and it slides forward to the place where the lips just begin to part so that the tongue can come out. Hold your tongue like that between your lips. And just listen to your breathing and the space at the top of your throat. Draw the tongue back in. And again, very slowly, kind of a lazy way, let your wide, soft tongue slide forward between your lips. Just let the tongue come out just a little bit and then draw it back in. But this movement is not important. It's an opportunity instead to notice the sensations. So if your tongue comes between your lips, can you feel that it means you're slightly opening the mouth? Notice just in front of your ears, can you feel what changes in your jaw as you slide your tongue forward? If you like, you can bring your hands up and just place your fingers in front of your ears as the tongue slides a little out of the mouth, and just listen with your hands inside your jaw. Again, you're not trying to do something. You're trying to just feel what happens there. So as you slide your tongue out, if you have your hands there in front of your ears, to feel the movement in the jaw, just notice the left side and the right side. Do you feel the same space in your jaw on both sides? And then let your tongue come back into your mouth and just use your hands to very gently touch all along your jaw. You can move towards the chin very softly, not pushing or stretching or pulling, but you're just finding the line of bone under the skin. It's like you want to contact the bone of your jaw with the bones in your fingertips. Very gently. If you move a little above the chin, maybe you can press through under your lips. You can feel the roots of your teeth. You can do that with the upper teeth. Feel your cheekbones. And then just for a few breaths, bring your hands up to cover your eyes and block out the light. Make sure that you're not putting pressure on your eyeballs. You can have the heels of the hands on the cheekbones, the fingertips on your forehead. Just let your hands be soft and warm. And listen to the movement of your breathing. And then bring your arms down to rest on the floor at your sides. Bend your knees and stand your feet. And breathe out. And when you finish breathing out, actually breathe out a little more. And then breathe out a little more again. And then let the air come in. Try that 2 or 3 times. So you, again, don't force, but really go 2 or 3 times to really push a little more air out. And then as the air comes in, maybe it feels like it rushes in a little faster. But even as the air comes in, does it need to make a sound? See what can you do to keep the sound of the breath to a minimum? So the breath flows, but can you put the smallest possible filter between your ears and the other sounds in the environment so that you can feel the movement of the breath? Maybe you can see the image of the breath. But it doesn't have to come between you and the surrounding sounds so much. And then just to check, for 1 or 2 breaths, invite that kind of to come back. And notice how that feels different. Does that change the quality of your experience? Maybe your thinking or even a kind of an emotional state that's different. And then after a couple of breaths like that, invite the quiet again. And then as you continue breathing quietly, each time you exhale, can you open your mouth and breathe out through your mouth? And then close your mouth to breathe in. Can the jaw be soft and feel the little sliding movement as the mouth opens? Just a slightly different thing to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Just breathe again through your nose. Just feel how it is now. Slowly begin to roll your head on the floor to one side. And then to the other side. As you do that, just feel what happens in your shoulders and your chest. And if there's a moment that rolling the head introduces some tension somewhere, just pause and notice your breathing. And maybe there's something about quieting the breath that could help you let go of something that is there. Roll your head left and right, and then maybe you could begin to allow your knees to move with your head a little left and right. Just allow more of the weight of your body to begin to move side to side. But even as you do this, can the breath remain quiet? Can it just come and go? And now, just think that maybe 2 or 3 minutes from now, you'll be standing. But rather than just sort of saying, okay, I'm done, time to get up, can you make the process of coming up onto your feet less important than the quietness of your breath? So you begin to think of transitioning, maybe rolling to one side, maybe coming to sitting, and eventually all the way up. But notice how this transition, it will involve effort, right? You have to now get your weight all the way back up off the floor. But when do you begin to use effort that restricts the breath, that makes a noise? And if you do, it's no harm done, right? But if you notice it, maybe in that moment, you'll pause and you'll wait for a moment and you'll do something that maybe introduces a little more quiet into the movement. And then maybe you'll continue. So maybe rolling side to side first, and then bringing the head up into sitting, taking your time. Coming eventually all the way up into standing. Once you're standing, just take a moment to experience your breath here, how your head rests on top of your spine. If the breath is quieter now, what does that give you? What about having a quieter breath? What does that afford you? It might be different than before. So then if you'd like to just maybe walk through your space again, just to see, what is this feeling? Maybe you can still be aware of the breath coming in and the breath going out, or maybe even that sinks into the background. So as you come back, I'm going to find those words from Suzuki, and I'm going to read them again. And we've used a little more time than I thought, so I might just read them and then check in with you. But I just invite you to listen. The words won't be new, but see if they ring somehow differently or new after what we've done. I invite you to listen. Just listen from this new place. When we practice zazen, our mind always follows our breathing. When we inhale, the air comes into the inner world. When we exhale, the air goes out to the outer world. The inner world is limitless, and the outer world is also limitless. We say inner world or outer world, but actually there's just one whole world. In this limitless world, our throat is like a swinging door. The air comes in and goes out like someone passing through a swinging door. If you think I breathe, the I is extra. There's no you to say I. What we call I is just a swinging door which moves when we inhale and when we exhale. Just moves. That is all. Your mind is pure and calm enough to follow this movement. There is nothing, no I, no world, no mind nor body, just a swinging door. So a few more minutes, I'll check in with you if you need to run. But let's just pretend we don't have to worry about that just yet. And so just notice where you are and what these words are right now. And if there's something from this place that you'd like to share, invite you to do that. And if you like, while you're thinking, we can just be together, breathing and see what that's like compared to before. So you are muted at the moment. If you unmute. Yeah.
Sorry, I tend to close my eyes a lot, so I don't even realize that. There was quite a range of sensations, but most interestingly, I do feel after the reading that there's a little less of a barrier, kind of a buzz in my head. And so I'm kind of resonating with a little bit of the buzz off that I hear around me, the refrigerator, the TV, it seems like, and it's just kind of like, I feel like I'm in more resonance with the sound around me, which is really interesting.
So, and we're kind of playing on the edge, right? Because this is the first time you even did a process like this. So of course there's a feeling of wanting to report on it, and it's interesting what you said, but just to kind of ask you to maybe sink in a little more, like, so what's it like to be a little more connected to the buzz, the refrigerator, and be a little less like, just what does this feel like? What does
Well,
this
I feel
do?
a little bit disembodied. I feel a little bit more light, almost kind of. I feel myself somewhat more in my head, but not in my head the way that I'm normally in my head, thinking head. But that my energy is just kind of like up here, even like surrounding my head. I do feel a little bit off the air, or off the floor somewhat. In the air.
I kind of felt like there was a lot of sensation similar to you as well that I could talk about that may or may not be interesting. And then after you read the passage again, it just kind of reminded me of, I've been trying to have a practice of reading more philosophical sort of texts on a daily basis, and just trying to let them permeate. And lately I've been reading the Hua Hu Jing, which is like the lesser known book by Lao Tzu.
Nice.
And in it, he's just constantly saying, like, what's the fucking point of you talking about any of this stuff? Like, you know, like what's really true is beyond any of this, and it's always going to change, and blah, blah, blah. It's like constantly being like, hey, just focus on being a good person, and that's like, that's what you need to do. And then after you read that, it just reminded me of that, and I was like, okay, well, you know, there is no inner world. It's all just one thing. Like, I mean, we can talk about it, and that's cool, but then also it's like, it's just all this stuff happening.
Yeah. Well, so of course he's describing Zen meditation practice, and that wasn't our practice today, but you know, and it's there's a little mystery in it. Like, in the beginning, there's an inner world and an outer world, but actually the same world, and by the end, there's no world, and there's no I, but even in the passage, there's sort of a progression from that one place to another place, and yeah, and then it's just, the thing is, and here I should pause because it's 9:30, but one of the things that I've already been thinking about this class, and maybe I'll just go ahead and do it from now on, but is, if you don't need to go, I mean, the thing is, we're talking now at the edge of something, but if we keep talking and keep exploring this, it's like we're going to start talking about that thing, as you say, that like, how can you even talk about it? But if you try, right, and you just speak words, and it's like, speak slow enough to hear the words you're saying because you don't even know what you're going to say as you say them, then there might be something there, right, that in that sense is different. Especially after a practice, you know, of this nature. Of course, we could have read something poetic, perhaps that had nothing to do with the breath. And if the breath enlivened us in some kind of way, maybe any words we read before and after would be different, you know. So
Sure.
I guess I'm stacking the deck in a certain way, the way I'm setting it up. But let me just pause though. Do either of you need to run? Or would you like to stay maybe 10 minutes or so?
I can stay 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, sure.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
I do need to go now.
Yeah.
Knowing the more openness of the future, that'll help me prepare.
Yeah, well, and it's a funny thing too, because of course, you know, it's an offering, it's a class, people have schedules and there's time zones, but what I'm looking for is, again, how to take the practice we did on the floor, which for you, Jonathan, is familiar, this practice of awareness through movement. But, you know, and we took some time to explain what we were doing at the beginning, but in fact, I think that we need that space on both sides because we could just say, see you later. And I understand that since you didn't know, we might stay longer. That's what you need to do right now. But there's a way that, you know, I hope to invite you, you know, whatever it is that you're about to do or maybe you need to run and do something. But the question to take with you is just like, how does this experience ripple into that next activity, right? And then, yeah, probably what I'm going to do from now on is maybe make a little more space. But the idea is we could potentially sit in that together, right?
Yeah, I find it very interesting. I'm very fascinated by the comparison of the before and after, and then also how does it permeate. So I'm very curious about,
Yeah, cool.
how it might ripple out.
It's good to meet you, Jonathan.
It's good to meet you too, Isabel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really enjoying the speckled sunlight on
I
you.
know. Me too.
You guys.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there's this beautiful tree that's all leafed out outside my window, and this is kind of like the prime light time. So it's always nice.
Cool.
A little piece of artwork there. Thank you.
All right, you guys, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan.
All right.
Enjoy the
Take
rest
care.
of your day. Well, so
Yes, I can still say for a few minutes.
yeah,
It was very interesting. I'm really curious about, yes, how you're going to continue to work it through and continue to kind of integrate with the circling as you work through the process. But it's wonderful.
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, this is the idea of it. I mean, if we had just started when I said lie on the floor and then we had finished up and ended, that's doing awareness through movement, right? And it's been a practice of mine for a long time.
And I've heard about the practice before. I just had never done it before.
Right.
Years ago, yeah.
Well, but if you practice yoga or if you meditate or you have any kind of a personal practice, and I'm sure you're already aware, right?
Yeah.
That like, if you do that and then you go meet your friend, it's
Mhm.
different than if you didn't just come from practice. If you just came from running an errand, it's,
Mhm.
you know, so, and the practices of circling or dialogos, which maybe people, if they see the recording, don't know about those, but you and I have experienced, and these are explicitly relational practices. They also take time, right, to drop into and to move through. But here you are and here I am, and now we're just two people trying to relate, and we know each other a little bit, but there's a lot we don't know. But is there a way that by having this experience and maybe by inviting a particular thing with the words, can we find ourselves a little more open, you know, to this encounter we're having, you know, in this moment?
Yes, and I think I'll just put out almost the entire time, and certainly when you reread the prose, the image of the swinging door, especially the fact that all remains at the end is the swinging door, I found to be so profound and in many ways, for me, my ground, I work with quantum mechanics from a philosophical perspective. I'm kind of a metaphysician. And so the swinging for me is just the vibrational ground of energy, that remains, because that is the ground of the real, as far as I feel. And so that movement must still be there, because even when all things have returned to the source, that is the source, right? Movement of energy, and until you fall to the full ground of whatever that may be. And then the image of that door still being the need for passage, for, but it's no longer passage from the in or the out, but just the relational movement that remains, right? And so that movement being the ground speaks to me, and the fact that it, that doorway is that openness that must kind of remain between people to have those relationships.
Right.
Yeah, that's what speaks to me.
Yeah, I mean, when we close ourselves off to each other, and maybe we don't even do it, so we just do what we do, right? But if, like, if I'm walking down the street and you're walking past me, and I'm not going to say hello, because I'll probably never see you again in my life. You're just that person walking by. There's a certain place, where maybe what difference does it make to greet the stranger passing by? And yet, even if the stranger wasn't there, what's the state of myself when I'm available? When the movement of that person through my life is worth something that I'm going to recognize, versus just like, I've my container is here, and I really think I think this is already there in movement practice. I mean, even just like I said, you meet your friend after, you could have just gone running, right? Let's just say you go running, but there, you can't be in your body the way you are in front of your computer screen when you go out running. Like, everything has to come on board and come alive, and everything has to kind of coordinate into a rhythmic thing, and you have to just be more embodied, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you come out of that, people exercise because they feel so different. They feel good afterwards. There's something that's moved through.
Exactly.
But I think we rarely, even though we notice, I feel good after I run, we kind of just leave it at that, right? And then and I feel like there's a thing there, that we can actually maybe become more intentional with.
Absolutely. There's definitely a generation of energy that we can take forward, as you say, into all the other activities that we do. And I think that if we are kind of aware of the source of that being kind of both within us and outside of us, and continually in movement through every interaction that we have, then there's power in understanding that. So yes, I'm happy to now be in, because I've lived kind of all over in Florida and Massachusetts, Michigan, all over. And I grew up in Kansas. So coming back to North Carolina is somewhat like coming back to the Midwest as far as the friendliness of the people. And it is very nice to live in a place where people say hi to you as you walk past them. You're walking with strangers, or even people are walking their dog and you drive past and they wave at you, and you wave back. And there's a lot to be said for that sort of interaction when it's kind of a staple or the norm.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah. It makes it for good living.
Yeah. Well, it feels good to exchange with you. I mean, we were in that workshop, but it's the first time we've had, this opportunity. And I'm just kind of riffing off of what you're saying, but I'm feeling it too, just this opportunity to be together and to experience, an opening and what that's like, and to have, in this case now, just the two of us, but to have it mirrored. It's so different than just to, those personal practices we do by ourselves they're sacred, right? They're so essential, and yet it comes alive in a new way when we're together.
Yeah.
We do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a really exciting thing about what I see happening now. And my friend who was here is an herbal medicine healer and music therapist. And we were talking about that. We were talking about how much is she seeing the movement, you know, because being out in California is just so much more present there than here. But the fact that I'm starting to see it here in the East Coast, or even in just small pockets of schools and my kids' activities and things that are making it more evident that the work is being done. It's a matter of integrating a lot of that and getting that momentum going.
Yeah.
With a concerted effort, I think. But yeah, it gives me a little bit of hope, which maybe I didn't have before. Maybe probably not even before the workshop did I have too much hope. So
Yeah.
it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. We need some things to be hopeful about, because it's easy to, you know, look out at the world and feel hopeless, but
Yes.
it doesn't feel good to feel hopeless. So if we can contact those things that that wake us up to our humanity and keep us oriented towards that, I think there's an incredible value. And, you know, what better could there be to do than to try to multiply that feeling and spread it around.